What is going on, guys? Today I have another rant for you, and once again we are going to be visiting the world of consoles. And I didn't expect to do another rant this soon, right after the one on last week on the Xbox One X with Phil Spencer and how he was trying to make it seem like 4K is more important than having a smooth gameplay experience at 60 frames per second. If you missed that rant, you can go back and check it out. But today we are going to be focusing kind of on console exclusives and the walled garden that consoles represent for these big corporations that really strikes a nerve with me. And it's not because I hate consoles in general. I think they have a very good place, in the market, and I've got really no problem with them in general or the people that choose to play on them. I get why people do it. It's, easy, doesn't really require any thought. You just buy the system, you get the games, and then everyone playing the games on those systems is having the same exact uniform experience, and I think that that does have a place in the gaming market. But when you introduce things like console exclusives, which are created solely by hardware manufacturers as a way of keeping you within the walled garden of their console ecosystem, whether it be Sony or Microsoft, then it really does bother me, especially when we see great games, in the past, like Uncharted, The Last of Us, and these games get limited to just being on the PlayStation. Thankfully, now Microsoft has actually, woken up and smelled the salts a bit, and now they are putting all of their exclusives, or pretty much all of their exclusives, on the Windows 10 platform as well, which I always thought should have been a thing. I mean, Microsoft owns Xbox, and they own Windows. Why would you want to, limit your market share of potential consumers that can buy your products? And I feel the same way about Sony as well. I think that they should put their games on the PC because I don't look at us as a direct competitor with Sony. I could understand wanting to limit their games from being on, the Xbox, but why the PC? Why not go out and launch your own, Windows store platform like Steam or Uplay or something like that? Why not launch a Sony store where you are getting 100% of the revenue that is going through there, and it's a place where you could port your console exclusives or Sony console exclusives to be available on the PC, because then you're just expanding your market even more. And if anyone that knows anything is that the software is where the money is. It's not the hardware, it's the software. And that's why they want to get people on their hardware generally, so that then they are locked in to buy their software. So seeing that the new Spider-Man game, which is coming from Insomniac Studios, which looks incredible. This game looks amazing. Like, they had a 9-minute gameplay demo trailer, which I'm going to have playing in the background here, and I will link down to the full thing in the description below. The gameplay and the graphics and everything on this are just out of this world, and I really wish we would get this game on the PC, but that's not going to be the case. It's the Spider-Man license as a whole, whether it be the movies or the games, are owned by Sony, so it really doesn't surprise me that they're making this a Sony exclusive. But on the Sony, even on the PS4 Pro, this game is going to be limited to 30 frames per second, and it's also going to be using temporal injection or temporal filtering to be able to achieve, the pseudo 4K that they're always marketing. Like, oh, this game is 4K. Well, really, it's not. Really, it's like closer to kind of 1440p, or maybe they throw in some dynamic resolution scaling in there somewhere. But yeah, this is not going to be native 4K, and it's going to be limited to 30 FPS, and the reasoning for that is very likely the processor in the Sony PlayStation 4 Pro, which is still insanely slow and ancient. Even though they upgraded from the PS4 to the PS4 Pro, they still are using an 8-core Jaguar processor. Sure, they went from 1.6 gigahertz to 2.1 gigahertz, but it's still stupidly slow. Anyone that understands PC hardware will know that if you tried to throw even a GTX 1080 Ti and pair that with a slow, older architecture 8-core CPU at 2.1 gigahertz, the 1080 Ti is not going to be able to reach its full-fledged potential, and it's going to be held back by that processor, particularly in open-world games, which are generally CPU-intensive. It's got to calculate a lot, and also with the Spider-Man game being widely physics-based as far as the swinging is concerned, and the webs and all of that stuff, that is going to certainly eat up a lot of CPU resources as well. So the processors in these consoles for both Xbox One X or Xbox One S and Xbox One and PS4 and PS4 Pro are all insanely slow, even though they've upgraded the GPUs to actually be not all that bad. I believe they're pushing over 4 teraflops. Yeah, 4.2 teraflops on their AMD Radeon-based graphics inside of the PS4 Pro. which is a huge upgrade from the PS4, which was only 1.84 teraflops. So that is helping them achieve the pseudo 4K and improving visuals in some areas and being able to drive HDR. But the CPU isn't really a factor as far as pushing that stuff is concerned, but it is with how many frames can actually be processed by that GPU, which is why we are still seeing so many of these games limited to 30 FPS, particularly in open world titles. And it's a real shame because, like I was saying, the game looks absolutely incredible, and Spider-Man games in general are usually not that bad. As far as, crossover is concerned for comic books and movies, usually we see an absolute shit show with those types of games, but Spider-Man has a fairly decent track record. Yes, there are some stinkers in there, but I remember the Spider-Man games on the PlayStation 1. I love those games. I probably put hundreds of hours into those titles, even though it was just a single-player game, but they were awesome. I really loved those games on the PS1. Also, Maximum Carnage on the Sega Genesis and the SNES. I still remember how I got that game. I remember going down to Funkoland, which is what GameStop used to be before it bought them out and all that. But I remember going down to Funkoland and trading in my original Nintendo Entertainment System and all of my games and controllers and the guns that came with it and all that stuff, just so that I could get the Maximum Carnage game. And I believe afterwards I only had like another $30 worth of credits. So I ended up sending my entire NES collection just to get a Spider-Man game, which I loved. I played the shit out of that game and had a ton of replay value. And yeah, I've always been a fan of the Spider-Man games, and I like Spider-Man in general, movies, what have you, comic books. Even though I'm Joker, I kind of like the Marvel stuff as well. So the Spider-Man game not coming to the PC is rather disappointing, and it's really just comes all down to Sony, or if it was Microsoft. Well, Microsoft puts on the PC, so we can't really bundle them in with Sony on this one because they are actually putting their exclusives on the PC. But Sony will be keeping this locked in on the PS4 at 30 frames per second with its pseudo 4K, and I think it's really shitty that they do this because we have what would otherwise be an incredible game. I mean, could you imagine these visuals on the PC with the open world and maybe even introducing things like mod support and what we could do with that? Oh, it would be amazing. And I really wish that it would stop. But unfortunately, it's just going to keep on going until these, hardware people wake up and smell the coffee. And like I was saying, a really easy way for Sony to do this without putting their games on all platforms is just launch an e-store on the PC. Put up a store like Steam or Uplay or Origin where you can drive the sales of your first-party exclusives and third-party games as well. You could sell whatever you want on there once you have a storefront. Maybe you could even beat Steam at their own game and have a better storefront. Who knows? And then you can include all of your platform exclusives on that store. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you guys think about this down in the comments for discussion. Rather disappointing we're not going to be getting this game on the PC if it was 1080p 60 FPS, I would really consider picking up a PS4 Pro for this game. It looks that good. I had picked up a PS4 when it came out just so that I could play The Last of Us in 60 FPS because it became available in 60 FPS in the remaster. But once I heard that the newer Uncharted games coming out weren't going to have 60 frames per second in the single player, I sold the console practically the next day because I immediately lost interest because those were the only other exclusives that I wanted to play, and if they're not 60 frames per second, I ain't going to touch the damn things, and that includes this game as well, because I would have maybe bought a PS4 Pro for this particular title and other ones if they were coming out in 60 frames per second, but unfortunately, they are not. So, as always, like I said, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think about this, and a like also, that always helps out the videos, and subscribe if you are not already. And I will catch you guys next time, and see you in the comments below for discussion. Ta-da!